For more on the influence billionaires potentially have in U.S. politics, I'm joined now by Rogers M. Smith. He's a Christopher H. Browne Distinguished Emeritus Professor of Political Science at the University of Pennsylvania. Sir, thanks so much for being with us.
Good to be with you.
So the rich have always been rich, right? But never before, it seems, have they wielded so much political clout in the U.S. How problematic is that potentially?
It's potentially deeply problematic. We have never had in our history a wealthy person like Elon Musk who's exercised so much power over the federal government. He is, while not having any official position other than advisor to the president, he's exercising more power than most cabinet officials, going over the payrolls and the staffing and the functioning of a wide range of federal agencies. This is extraordinary influence by any outsider, and especially a billionaire who does an extraordinary amount of business with the federal government.
And so then what impact, does these Doge shenanigans that's going on had on Americans, and specifically on the labor market? How big are the cuts in reality? Because Musk recently said the cuts are fractional, and if they're not made, the U.S. will go bankrupt. What's your assessment there?
Well, the cuts so far haven't saved money in a way that can address the very real problems of the federal debt. But what they have done is to eliminate lots of federal personnel and programs that provide vital services to many of the American people. We're losing funding for health services, for scientific, technological, and medical research, for emergency disaster relief, and for a whole host of other programs that do affect most Americans in their everyday lives. The impacts haven't hit home yet, but the projections are not encouraging.
And this makeover of government-private sector relations, they aren't new, are they? So what makes it different this time round?
What makes it different is the rapidity and breadth of the efforts to reduce government in the name of making it more efficient. But the Trump administration has understood that they have a honeymoon period in which they can try to accomplish as many of their goals as possible. And knowing that a lot of these actions will produce difficulties and some political pushback, they have tried this flood the zone strategy of doing everything at once. And while in some ways that is effective, it also means they have to take lots of procedural shortcuts so that a lot of what they're doing violates established procedures and has produced a flood of litigation as well.
Yeah, and how might the changes implemented by Musk's team, or the ones that they're trying to implement, how do they benefit his private sector endeavors? Because, for example, his Tesla stock has taken a big hit along with other corporations over these tariff tantrums from Trump. That's
certainly true. Now, most of the money that Musk makes from the federal government comes from SpaceX, and it is quite likely that the Trump administration will not only continue to treat SpaceX favorably, but will expand the kinds of space and military initiatives that SpaceX benefits from. But the primary benefit that Musk gets from his influence on the federal government is in weakening the regulatory power of the federal government to address any improper business practices, while at the same time winning federal support in expanding markets overseas. Plus, there's the hope that we'll reduce taxes on the super rich.
And reducing these regulations, and then, of course, as you say, potentially big tax breaks for the wealthy. Are there industries in particular, I know you mentioned SpaceX, but others that are gaining from close ties with Trump, or is he open to anyone who sort of pledges to invest in the U.S., companies like Apple, like Hyundai, for example?
I think that the sector that is benefiting the most is really the big tech sector, the Silicon Valley companies, because in the first Trump administration, Trump was not a friend of those companies, nor were they friends of his. Now they donated to his inauguration, and the talk of antitrust action to break up an Amazon or a Facebook or a Google, that's gone away, and instead they're benefiting from the deregulation agenda that the Trump administration is pursuing.
And on his final day in office, President Joe Biden warned of a potential oligarchy taking hold in the U.S. Do you think that that's in the future? And then what does all of that mean for everyday Americans?
Well, the unfortunate reality is that the U.S. government has been more responsive to the policy preferences of wealthy Americans for a long time now, and through administrations of both parties. Having said that, again, we have never had billionaires exercising the kind of direct influence on federal policymaking that we're seeing right now. And if the wealthy are effectively controlling the government, that is the meaning of the word oligarchy.